Hello, good day and welcome to today's webinar. We'll give like 2 more minutes for more people to join and then we'll officially start today's webinar. You're welcome. Um, okay. All right, you're welcome. Sorry about the glitch in joining earlier. You're welcome to today's webinar. Is the creating your brand guidelines. So on Tuesday, we had the first part, which is creating your brand identity. And today we have creating your brand guidelines. And we hope to start very soon. We're having more people join now and we'll start in a minute. Thank you and welcome. So thank you, welcome Innocent. And you can use the chat just like Innocent has done to introduce yourself again and where you are joining us from today. Creating your brand guideline. This is the second webinar for week 6, which is under the theme branding. And we have our presenter with us today. She was here on Tuesday and she's here today again to round up or complete this week on branding. So I will just do a brief introduction of our presenter. But then, yes, my name is Success Eugene, and I'm WMI Leadership Skill and Development Coordinator, and I'm glad to be moderating this webinar today. So our presenter is Brenda. I'm Brenda Odhiambo. She's a communication specialist with 8 years experience in corporate communication and public relations from both private and public organizations, and also from international development organizations in sub-Saharan Africa. She has experience in developing communication and outreach strategies and plans, production of communication materials, writing talking points and speeches, and media relations. She has worked closely and continues to work with country teams and internal units on cross-cutting issues, assuming responsibilities of supervising communication leads in an organization to meet short-term and long-term project goals and objectives. Brenda holds a Master of Arts in Communication Studies, Public Relations Concentration from the University of Nairobi. She is currently working as a lead of the MasterCard Foundation Scholar Program Communication at USIU Africa. And it's with great honor I have to welcome Brenda to speak to us again on how to create our brand guidelines. You're welcome, Brenda. The floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Success. I think you can see me. Yes, you can see me. Great. So we'll start. And on Tuesday, we spoke at length about how to develop your brand identity. And essentially, a brand guideline is what helps you to maintain this identity, right? So it guides your tone, it guides the kind of imagery you use, it guides the kind of colors that you use, right? And this is all about how to communicate your brand, right? And so it includes elements like your logo, your color palette, your typography, photos, illustrations, and your voice and tone as a brand. In terms of who should be involved in creating your brand guidelines, most of the times, if you're a small business, then perhaps you might engage the services of brand consultancy, but ideally other people who need to help you are the sales managers, because they interface with both the brand and your customers. Your executives at the top, because they can ensure that your guidelines will be aligned with the company objectives. The legal team, if you can access one, because they'll help you to identify what has been trademarked and what has been not, and they can help you navigate the issue of getting patents. And of course, you have the designers who are going to be very instrumental in terms of creating the visual aspect of your brand, right? Brand guidelines are important because they assist effective marketing, right? If you are consistent with your branding, then you're able to make your marketing a bit more effective, right? You can craft campaigns that are able to resonate with your brand's personality and values. It builds effective collaborations. And this is because brand guidelines are a common point of reference for everyone in your organization. So be it someone from sales, be it someone in marketing, they all understand clearly what your brand should be communicating at all times. It builds professionalism and trust. If you build a very coherent and cohesive brand guidelines, then you're able to communicate that you're a company who takes itself seriously, and in so doing, your customers will also be able to take you seriously. Then consistency and recognitions. So you can maintain, a consistent visual and verbal identity across all touch points, right? So whether I'm accessing you online, whether I'm in your store, whether I'm viewing a print ad, right? The look and feel of your brand should be the same no matter where I'm accessing it from. The other obvious advantage is differentiation. Of course, if you take time to really define what your identity is, defining what your color palette is, defining what your typography is, you're able to stand out more from your competitors, right? And so, of course, the more you create a very cohesive and coherent brand, the more you're able to create a lasting experience and a lasting relationship with your customers, because they know that you're consistent in your dealings with them. So when you're creating your brand guidelines, the first thing you need to do is to include your brand ethos and values, right? So this is the thing that guides you. This is the why you're waking up in the morning. This is the reason why you do what you do, right? And so this is essentially lets people know. So yes, we have our USP. Yes, this is what we want to do. And this is how our branding relates to this mission, right? And this is how our branding will contribute to where we want to go in the future as a company. Your brand values. So this is essentially for people to have a sense of what you want to achieve, right? So like for the illustration that we've used here, they want to keep it simple. They're entrepreneurial, they're honest, they're open, they're caring, and they're fun. They provide great value, right? So what do you want your customers to know about you, right? Your logo, we spoke at length about this earlier in the week. And essentially, this is the thing that people will rally around you, right? So yes, they'll know your name, but your logo is what will stand out in their minds for them, right? And so some of the things that you can consider in your guideline. So do you have different versions of the logo? So you find that sometimes maybe you have a word mark, right? Which is just the logo in words, or you have the image, or you have a mix between the image and the wording. So how are you going to apply these logos for various situations, right? Does the logo appear only in one color, or do you have different colorways, right? Based on your primary and secondary colors, how else can the logo be rendered, right? Does it have size restrictions? So how small or how big can the logo be placed on various items, right? Does it need adequate margins around it? So when you're doing a logo, what is the minimum size, or what is the minimum space that needs to be left around the logo for it to breathe and to look better in the context that you're using it, right? So an example here is the NASA logo, right? And they're very clear in their logo. They tell you that the entire thing means aeronautics, right? The stars to them represent space. The orbit, which is the circular thing here, represents space travel. And the sphere represents a planet, right? For the UN Habitat brand guidelines, which we've used as our illustration here, they say that for it to be considered a complete logo, it must have the UN Habitat logo and the tagline at the bottom, right? And they further go and say that they need this to be applied consistently across all communication items, right? In terms of logo variation, so like we've discussed, yes, you can have the version in color, but think about the times where you're printing maybe t-shirts, or maybe you're printing something in black and white, or maybe you're printing photocopies, right? So you need to tell people, based on our brand colors, based on our primary and secondary colors, this is how else our logo can look like, right? And then another thing you can consider is the language, right? So if you translate your logo into French, into Arabic, into Spanish, will the logo remain the same, or will it change according to the local language, right? So in this case, you can see that the UN Habitat has gone a step further, and they've defined the languages in which the logo can be used. So we have Arabic, we have the English version, we have the Russian, the Spanish, the French, and Chinese versions, right? And then minimum logo size use. So a logo must be responsive, right? And now more and more, where we find that people are accessing content, or they're accessing your brand through their phones, through their tablets, their laptops, your logo must be adaptable to each of those screen sizes, right? This logo on the right is primarily seen on books, and you can tell that some books are small, and so they define and say this is the minimum size that the logo can go. So in this case, it's about 6.5 millimeters, right? If your company has a mobile website, right, how small will that logo appear? If I'm doing it on the website, how big should it be, right? The logo spacing. So when you're laying out your logo, you don't want it to look cramped, right? You want it to have enough space to breathe, so that when someone sees it in a document, it stands out and it is very impactful. So when you're designing a logo, there's something called the X height. So this is the minimum height, or the minimum space that must be maintained around your logo to make it stand out. So in this case, most of the time you find that some people specify 10 millimeters, or some people, like the UN Habitat in this case, say that the minimum size that should be left on all sides of their logo is the size of the U in UN Habitat, right? I believe you can all see that illustration in the image. Then specify what correct or incorrect usage of your logo looks like, right? So when you have rebranded, for instance, tell people that they are now supposed to use a new logo, right? Tell them that any use of the old logo is incorrect, right? Tell people not to rotate or distort the logo. We've seen logos whereby you find people, you've said that your font is blue, but someone has put it in green. You've said that your font is serif, someone has put it in sans serif, someone has added shadows to the logo, someone has either stretched or condensed it to be smaller to fit whatever item they're producing, right? They must use all the colors that have been specified in the brand guidelines. They must avoid resizing or repositioning any elements of the logo. Avoid using low resolution versions. So we've seen logos where they look so pixelated and so blurry, right? So you need to avoid that. And avoiding logo placement on images, right? Of course, images by themselves tend to be extremely busy. So if you place a logo on an image, then it loses its meaning, right? So here an example of what we mean. So don't delete the elements. So in the first logo, we can see that they've deleted the orbit and they've deleted the stars, right? Meaning that the logo is incomplete, right? In the second, they've added an element, which is they've added a rocket, which is not part of the logo, right? The third is we can see here that they've distorted the insignia, right? So they've made NASA bigger than it's supposed to be, which should not be the case. In the fourth one, you can see that they've added a glow, which was not there in the previous logo, and they've removed the stars, right? The other example here we can see is that they've changed the colors, right? This vector needs to be red, the NASA needs to be a deeper blue, the orbit is white, right? And then lastly, they've added colors, right? It should not be black, it should be blue, right? And then localizing the use of your logo, right? Again, we've said that our companies evolve. We go into different territories, we go into newer places, right? And so you need to build this into your brand guidelines. So if you're going to an Arabic country, for instance, right? They read from, is it left to right or right to left? So you need to build that consideration into your brand guidelines so that your logo is correctly placed at all times, right? The third item is your brand colors. Of course, we talked about primary and secondary colors. And so here the key items you need to put in mind is define what your principal colors are. So if it is blue, tell me what the Pantone is, right? So Pantones are these numbers that you can see here in this image. And so when you're printing, when you're developing digital content, making reference to those Pantones makes it very easier to get the exact shade of color that you need for your branding, right? Define what your primary colors are. So here you can see that this primary color is blue, right? They've defined the Pantone, which is 306C. They've given us the CMYK values. They've even given us the web values. So when you're looking or when you're printing your digital items, you know exactly the codes that you need to use, right? And then your secondary colors, of course, these serve to enhance your brand depth, right? And so for the UN Habitat, this is their primary color and these are their secondary colors. I'm sure each of us can see how each of these colors would complement each other, right? So for instance, this would be a monochromatic. We find that these others would be analogous. Some of these colors are opposite on the color wheel. So they'll be very complementary to each other, right? And then of course, define where your secondary colors can be used, right? So for instance, like USA, Africa, our main colors are blue and yellow, right? But for each of the schools that we have, each school has a different color. So like the School of Business is red, the School of Communication is orange, and so on and so forth, right? Your brand typography. So this is the font that you want to be associated with your brand, right? For instance, in this case, their font is Roboto, and they've gone forward to give you how it would look like in several iterations, right? So give us the typefaces and weights of each. So are you using the regular version? Are you using the bold? Are you using the light, right? You have one font for headings and another for body text, right? So when you're doing a presentation, what font will be the headline in and what will the text of your presentation be in, right? Do you have size specifications for your text? So if I'm doing a document, what is the size? Is it 11? Is it 12? Is it 12.5, right? Define that, right? You might have a typeface that is used exclusively on your logo. So you find that some people go a step ahead and commission very unique fonts for their brand. So tell us what those fonts are, right? Brand photography and graphics. Of course, photos and good graphics help you communicate your brand in a way that sticks out, in a way that will stand out to your customer, right? So think about whether your logo can be used on top of your photography, right? Sometimes, yes, you might want to have your logo on your image, but the competing elements make it hard for you to apply it, right? Do you have graphic elements that can be lifted from your logo? So if your logo has an image and it has a word mark, right? Can you maybe use the word mark elsewhere in your graphic elements, right? Do you want your photos that you use to communicate a certain thing? So do you want them to be of people interacting? Do you want them to be colorful? Do you want them to be of people in groups? You need to specify that, right? And then lastly, are there photos that should be avoided? So for instance, you can say that in your brand guidelines, you don't want the images to be overly staged, right? You want all the participants in the image to look natural, like, right? So here we can see in this example, the brand says that their photos should set the mood, right? So this is an environmental company. So it already puts you in that mood of environment or organic things, right? It needs to set the mood, right? It needs to catch the attention of the viewer, right? So this is an overhead shot of a river, right? And it needs to tell the monobrand story, right? So their story is that they're in agriculture. So how does the imagery communicate that, right? Of course, you can also put indicators on the types of images to use. So are you using animations? Are you using illustrations? Are you only going to use photos? Are you using patterns, and how are you going to use them, right? Guidance on when to use stock images. Of course, you recognize that sometimes you might not have live images of people to use. So what kind of stock images can you use in your brand guidelines, right? And then lastly, the preferred color schemes. What are the main colors that need to be in your imagery, right? So in this case, in our illustration with the UN Habitat Guidelines, they want the photos to look natural. So in each of these photos, you can see that The subjects don't look overly posed, they look like they're in the middle of their day-to-day activities. They feature human interaction, right? So in the third photo, you can see that there's a lady or there are two boys running in the rain. In the second image, you can see there's a lady looking out of her window. In the first image, you can see an image of a girl standing at a railway line, right? And then they also specify that you must have appropriate captions, right? So these are some of the items that you must put there, right? In terms of your brand stationery, beyond your social media artworks, beyond the adverts that you place, your stationery is among the places that people will have a chance to interact with you, right? So tell me the kind of text. How do you want your text to appear, right? What fonts will be used on your imagery, right? If it's merchandise that you're producing, where will the logo be placed in the merchandise? If you're producing things like roll-up banners, if you're producing things like signage for a thing, right? Or a project that you're having, how does your logo look like? How are you going to co-brand? And maybe just to touch on co-branding, of course, if you're the lead partner in a co-branding project, your logo must come first, right? And then you put the other logos in the order of either how much they're contributing or what they're contributing to the project or what their role is in terms of the project, right? In terms of brand signage, of course, your brand can have a physical location. So how do you want your signage to look like, right? Will your sign solely be flat, right? Can you have lit up boards, right? Will it be fine? What kind of material will they be made from, right? And then how then will your logo be placed based on the material of the signage and based on the location of the signage, right? And then your brand voice and tone. Of course, we spoke about this on Tuesday, but you need to really define who you are. So if you're a fun brand, right? So how is that funness going to come through in your written material, in your video content, in the kind of tone you even use on your social media platforms? How will that come out, right? Strong brand voice and tone help you to differentiate yourself from your competitors, right? So of course, sometimes you find that you have competitors in the field. You're saying the same thing, but you say it differently, right? So for instance, FedEx, and UPS, both of them are in logistics and delivery, but FedEx says that when it absolutely has to be there overnight, and UPS takes the same spin and says they're customer first, they're people led and innovation driven, right? Of course, it helps you build authority with your audience, right? If your tone is consistent, if built that authority, right, you become very trustworthy and very credible to your audience, right? And they feel more compelled to spend their money on you, right? It can help you form connections with your target market, right? You don't have to just speak in a very cold, robotic way, right? Humanizing your brand can help your consumers develop a connection with you, right? And of course, research has shown that 57% of your consumers will increase their spending if they feel connected to a brand, right? Increase your consistency across all platforms, right? Consistency helps you to develop a very strong, very authentic means of expression that is exclusive to your brand, right? Of course, on digital, this may be very different. So perhaps you find that the tone you need to speak with on LinkedIn and the tone that you need maybe on Instagram and TikTok is different, right? So yes, still be yourself, but figure out how you're going to play around with the algorithms, play around with the kinds of audience characteristics that you've identified and figure out how you're going to put this in your brand guidelines. Of course, the other thing that you might need to define is whether you can use emojis in your text, whether you can use abbreviations, whether you can use slang. And you've seen that many companies, sometimes there's a very, viral trend that is going up, but you find that, some companies respond way, way, way after the trend is over. And it is because perhaps maybe they did not take the time to sit down and say, okay, these are the kinds of content you can share. These are the kinds of languages that you can comment on. These are the kinds of posts that we might consider engaging in, right? So brand voice and tone guidelines. So for instance, this is the tone guideline for Uber. And for them, they tell you that the content that you must craft for them should be optimistic, right? whereby you're communicating that you're able to solve problems, that the future is bright, right? It must be inviting. Uber is for everyone, right? And lastly, the third characteristic is that their voice should be their leaders in their field, right? And that they want to share their innovations with us, right? And then provide examples of how you want your personality to come through in your style and messaging, right? So for this example, we have Channel 4, BBC in Britain, and they say that their language should be bold, it should be surprising, it should be challenging. And I'm sure you can see from some of these examples here that they definitely know how to get their message across, right? And then give team members a guideline on how they can communicate on each platform, or how they can communicate to each audience, right? So for instance, here you have a guideline, right? Excuse me, I have a flu, I apologize for that. So here, for example, we have a guideline or a guidebooks, right? And so the users they've identified are prospective customers who may either be new or intermediate users of the project. And then the goal is to educate them. And so the tone of the messaging then changes and becomes, keep it simple, clear and concise, avoid jargon and stay empathetic, right? And as you can see for each of the content categories they've identified, right? They've gone ahead to define who their users are and the possible items that they might require from their communication and how best to meet those needs, right? Remember, we spoke about demonstrating value and ensuring a top-notch customer experience. And so things like these are what contribute to that, right? Of course, adding a checklist, sometimes maybe people might not have the time to read through your entire brand guidelines, but give them a one-pager whether they can imply or whether they can refer to, so that they know what to include or what not to include, right? And then best practice, right? So don't just give me a document full of text and tell me, yeah, this is the brand guidelines. Show me what you need. Give me concrete illustrations that I can refer to, right? So like for these brand guidelines, you can see they said you must align the text to the left, leave space for logos and text to breathe. Don't use a mix of shapes. Don't use colored backgrounds, right? It's very clear. No one can go wrong if they were to download those guidelines, right? The second thing is that you need to make your assets easy to access. Of course, the trend has been to, you do a PDF document or you do a presentation, you send it out to people, and it's sort of forgotten about that. And so when someone wants to make reference to your brand guidelines, they really have to search their computer to find. So what you can do is that find a way where you can host your brand guidelines online, whereby people have a link that they can just be going and clicking, or whether you can have a dedicated web page on your website that people can just refer to from time to time if they need advice on how to use your brand. And then, of course, include guidelines for each channel, right? So if it's digital, how do you create content for digital? If I'm using a host of social media platforms, right? Of course, the tone on LinkedIn and the tone on Twitter will be different. So how do you establish those differences clearly in a way that your staff will be able to understand, right? We've talked about having digital brand guidelines. So I'll skip to the next point, which is update your brand guidelines. Of course, your brand guidelines need to be a living document, right? So look at it every once a year just to find out that, it's being applied as it needs to be applied. Do an audit of all your assets, check whether they're using their brand guidelines, check whether your values are still the same as when you started. If it's not, then this is your opportunity to course correct, to rebrand or to emphasize specific aspects of your guidelines, right? And so we've come to the end of today's presentation, and I have an exercise for you. I don't know whether Fred has been able to give us the breakout rooms. Success, could you confirm that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not been able to.
Okay, I wish I could see a list of the people. We're about 30. So I think I'll just read out the names. So Innocent, Katrina, Paul Joseph, Cassidy, Derek, Amadou, Mohammed Abubakar, Francis, Ezekiel, Olive, Sharon. So you'll be in group 1, right? I don't know how you're going to do this. Or maybe I should just give each of you time. So I'm going to give you this exercise. So we have 3 products, right? One is a flying school bag that you can control with remote control. The second is a new high-speed flying carpet. The third is an alarm clock that switches off when you shout at it. So the question is, what would be your brand name and why? Explain what your logo would look like. If you can share illustration, perfect. You can attach it in the chat. What is your brand essence and how would you communicate your USP? So I want each of us to take about 5 minutes to think about that exercise, and I will be picking volunteers randomly. So all of us must work on this exercise. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then I'll start picking randomly. So get your thinking caps on, looking forward to listening to what you come up with. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just to iterate what Brenda said, there are 3 questions on the screen, and we're meant to look through those 3 questions and, those 3 brand products. Now we have a flying school bag that you can control by remote control. The second product we have is a new high-speed flying carpet. The third one we have is an alarm clock that switches off when you shout at it. So we are asked to then form our brand name. What would be your brand name and why? Then explain what your logo would look like for each of these products. Which one are you going for? So explain what your logo would be like if you're going for the second product or the third or the first product. And if you can share an illustration, please feel free to. And now you want to go to find out what your brand essence would look like. This is all from Tuesday, right? The brand essence we were taught on Tuesday. So how best would you communicate your unique selling point with this product? And share an example of a message that we use to promote your brand. So that's just to repeat what she had said earlier. And this exercise is going to take 5 minutes. I think we have, let's say 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes left before she randomly picks from the participants for someone to answer what they've come up with, or share what they've come up with. So we have more time to take questions at the end of towards the end of the webinar. So please don't leave. We are still on and we are still live. This session is still going on. Just keep working on this exercise, and very soon you'll start hearing responses from anyone who's done. So let me assist a little here. A brand essence is something that makes your brand stand out from the competitors. So if you're asking what's your brand essence should be like just kind of to juggle your memory there. It's something that makes your own brand stand out from your competitors, something that's very, very unique about your brand.
Thank you for that success. I think our 5 minutes are over. And I'm going to start with Liz Josiah. So tell us which product you picked and give us some of the thoughts behind your brand name, explain what your logo would look like, your brand essence, and how you communicate about your USP. So Liz, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I've not finished everything. The 5 minutes was not enough for me. So my brand name will be Sky Liz.
That's
So
for the bag.
that is for the flying school bag.
Okay.
Yeah, Sky Liz. So Liz, my name, and then Sky because it flies. So the essence of the brand I felt is just it will be centered around empowerment, empowerment for children and also for adventure, because it's more of adventure like. Yeah, so that is the far I got.
So if you
Yes.
had to pick, just off the top of your head, if you had to pick a tagline for Skylies, what would it be?
Tagline.
Keeping in mind that perhaps your tagline would be the main message that you're using to promote your brand. So what would your message or what would be your tagline? You don't have to overthink it, just the first thing that jumps to your head.
Yeah,
so
ride the breeze. Ride the
very
breeze.
nice.
Or
I like that.
beyond boundaries. Actually, ride the breeze of beyond boundaries. Because flying, yeah, beyond boundaries, yeah, something like that.
Great. Thank you for that. Akelo Rosemary, you had your hand up. Perhaps you'd like to contribute. What product do you choose? What is your brand name? What would your logo look like? And why? Akelo? Okay. I think she's gone offline. So
Yeah, Mohammed
Mohammed.
Abubakar. Yeah.
Mohammed and Theophilus. So I think Mohammed, you can go first.
Okay, thank you very much. For me, I choose number 3.
Okay.
And the name will be Awake Clock. And the reason is to assure that our product will wake you up. And our logo is like an alarm clock on a suitcase. And
why the suitcase?
This to ensure that you go about your daily business as you plan. So, the suitcase represents your daily business, and the alarm to ensure that as whatever plan you set to wake up and do your things, you're able to wake up. So that's why we choose these two together. And our tagline will be there as you planned. Yeah, so our alarm clock is the only clock that truly wakes you up.
Very nice. Okay, Theophilus, I think you also had your hand up.
Okay, good afternoon from Nigeria.
Hi.
All right, so I will probably be doing my own brand exercise on number 3. So that is on the alarm clock. So the brand name is going to be Yell Stop Alarm. It's a kind of signifying the it's a kind of a little summary of what you just described in number 3, which is an alarm that goes off when you shout at it. So the brand name is going to be Yell Stop Alarm. Then the brand message essence is like going to be empowering mornings and unleashing your wake up roar. So like when you roar in the morning, shout, and it empowers you to stop the alarm clock for you to wake up and proceed with the day activities. So the logo is going to like a feature like a mouth like that is shouting with Yell Stop, like a kind of signifying the brand which is Yell Stop. So like a mouth that is shouting like full of energy and then coming out from an alarm clock. So the Yell Stop is like going to be like a sound wave that is coming out of the mouth from the alarm, and is a kind of symbolizing the power of your choice to stop the alarm. And we're going to use a color scheme or something like that symbolizes energetic tones, like something like a vibrant red or orange color, to convey the energetic nature of the product. So the promotional message at the SP communication is going to be like the promotional message is going to be something like a breakthrough from your shackles of traditional alarms, introducing Yell Stop Alarm, the alarm clock that listens to you, in the sense that when you shout at it, the alarm clock listens to you, and at the same time, it equally empowers you with energy to get out of your bed and conquer the laziness to go around with your day's activities. So that's just the summary.
Okay, interesting. Very nicely done. Who else? Derek. I hope you're doing the high-speed carpet. No one seems to want to tackle that.
Thank you very much. Greetings from Uganda. I will do the number 2, a new high-flying carpet. So what would my brand name be? I would basically go for Hermes, which is an ancient Greek god who was a messenger and had flying shoes. So Hermes used to move around, deliver messages from the gods to the people with his flying shoes. And explain how your logo would look like. Basically, I would have like a piece of carpet with some wings, with like angel wings. And then what would be my brand essence? I would basically go for connecting borders, because now we are like this carpet is flying high and it has no borders. So it would basically connect all the people in all the nations. Then my next selling point would basically also follow that line of my essence, where like where like we are redefining borders and connecting people.
Great, thank you. I think from the responses I can see we engage with the content, so I'm going to go over to the Q&A if anyone has any. Oh, Akelo Rosemary again.
Okay. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
We can hear you.
Yeah, mine. My brand name. I took the first one.
Okay.
The flying school bag. So my brand name would be Magical Bags. Yeah. So maybe let's say I'm dealing with bags. So I decided my brand name to be Magical Bags. And the essence, maybe I give affordable bags to, like, maybe the needy and others can access. So my logo would be like I draw some bag with a magical wand, something like that. Then the message I would be giving out would be magical touch always. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. That was very nicely done. We will go to the Q&A now if anyone has any further questions.
All right, thank you. So I actually have an idea I would like to share. So I love using school bags, and when I saw the first option, I was like, that would be a great one, because just yesterday, my dad held my school bag and he was like, oh, this is heavy. How do you carry this all around? So I was like, a flying school bag would be good to take the weight off my shoulders. So I don't know the name to give that really, but a unique selling point could be, let's help you carry this weight, something like that.
Yeah.
And then I can just use my remote control and control the bag, so I wouldn't have to carry heavy bag all the way.
Yeah.
And really, that's a very nice something that we can think through and walk around.
Yeah.
So thank you for this exercise. Really engaging.
You're welcome.
And I'm looking through the Q&A to see if I have any questions. All right, so, but there's a question here, and you quickly rushed through monobrand story. You said tell a monobrand story when you're talking about pictures, and I would like you to kind of give more in-depth knowledge on that, what a monobrand story is.
Oh no, that was a company. That was an illustration in the presentation. The company is called Monobrand. Yeah. But essentially, your brand guidelines need to be very clear. Remember when we talked about brand architecture, we said that you can have the parent company, you can have the subsidiaries. And so you need to figure out how the brand will be run right from the top, right from the parent company. How is that going to look like? And then how are the subsidiaries going to look like in terms of the expression, right? Are you keeping the same elements, or are they going to be different but somehow still, tying back to the whole master brand identity, if I can call it that?
Okay, thank you. So another question is it possible for a brand to have content on all social media platforms, or are there social media platforms that are not, like they are not really conducive, but they don't fit into your brand? Because you kind of mentioned content types and social media platforms. So
yeah, I think it depends on your audience. So we talked about knowing your audience a bit more. So knowing where they are, knowing the kind of media they consume, I think would really help. I don't think it's an issue of a specific platform not being useful to the brand. I just think it's a user issue on the side of the audience, right? So like for us, we noticed that our content on Facebook and our content on Twitter doesn't really do as well as the content we put on Instagram and on TikTok. And the reason behind this is because we deal with students, and our students are mostly active on Twitter and, or rather on Instagram and TikTok, right? And so you find that even the kind of content we post, so like for LinkedIn is solely organizational updates, organizational activities. And then on TikTok and Instagram, we focus on student activities, so the clubs, the sports, the extramural activities that take place on and off campus. We talk about things like alumni features. So it's all about knowing your audience, what they like to consume and where they like to consume it from, I'd say.
Thank you. And this is for a CBO NGO brand. So should branding guidelines, logos be targeted to the beneficiaries or to the funding partners, to the donors, beneficiaries or donors?
I think it's both, because ultimately the beneficiaries in some way, shape, or form will become your brand ambassadors. But you need to be very careful with that. So I'll give an example of the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program, right? So they have brand guidelines for us as partners, right? So for us, they tell us this is how you need to mention them. This is how you need to use their logo in your text, but they go ahead and say, for the students, yes, they might want to say, okay, I'm a MasterCard Foundation scholar and I'm doing this project because it was sponsored by the MasterCard Foundation, but they say that because that might be misconstrued, they limit it to mentioning it only in the text. You cannot use their logo elsewhere. So you need to be careful, basically. So it applies to them. So for the donors, you're telling them that, yes, this is how you want us to use their logos. For the beneficiaries, you tell them, okay, we acknowledge that we may have impactful projects together, but you cannot use our logo on your material, but you will be mentioned, when the partner or the implementing partner mentions your project in any communication material. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Francis is done with his assessment and he puts it in the chat, if you can see.
Yes, I like that. To see sounds like to see, probably seeing every morning. A convenient clock, very catchy. A listening clock, communication, a clock you instruct to be punctual. Okay. Nicely done, Francis. Thank you. Isaac, thank you as well. I think I'll leave my email address like I did last time if you didn't catch it in the chat. Success will be sharing the slides.
Yes, Fred does that in the group after every webinar. So he'll do that today as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Thank you for engaging with the exercise as well. And of course, this is something that's continuous. You have Brenda's email address. You can make yours, maybe not with the exercise examples she gave, with your personal idea or your already, ongoing business or NGO, and share with her so she can look through as well. So over to you, Brenda, if you have any last words.
No, it's been a pleasure. I don't know whether Joyce is on this call. If she is, I'd like to say hi to her. We've been corresponding a lot on email, so yeah. But thank you, everyone. You've been a good audience. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to meeting you all and engaging with all of you further.
Thank you all so much. Until next week. Next week is week 7, and we're talking about M&E, and same time, Tuesday and Thursday would be here again. So till next time, bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Hi, Fred.